Hi everyone, welcome to Module 4, When Threat Becomes Embodied. So let me just lay the foundation a little bit. So far we did kind of an overview of what stress was and kind of where we were going with the whole class, and then last week I got much deeper into kind of how your systems work and where we're going with everything, and I started talking about the spiral of becoming, and then got much deeper into perception. You kind of focused on what happens with your own perception, how you get uniquely triggered, what happens with your own inner chatter. And then where we left off was after perception, you make meaning, and then from meaning, you have a physiological imprint in that spiral of becoming. And so I just kind of briefly went over kind of the systems that are involved of the spiral of becoming at the end of last week. And so what we're going to do this week is we're going to get much deeper into what happens with your fear response system in that physiological imprint. Because again, every moment of every day, you carry a physiological imprint. A huge part of that physiological imprint when you are stressed out or when your fear response system is in control is how cortisol just takes over your body. And so we're going to spend a lot of time talking about cortisol this week. So let me go back and just kind of explain what you're going to do. You have a couple readings to do. You're going to have a regular reading in the book, When Threat Becomes Embodied, because again, this whole week is how your whole mind-body complex plays together and not only creates the perception of everything that you're seeing, whether it's good or bad, but also goes back and perpetuates those states. In other words, every moment of every day you're transforming. And so any physiological imprint that you have of that moment just creates a greater capacity for more of the same. And we've talked about that, but we're going to get deeper into how that happens in your fear response role, because then it gives us a good blueprint to understand how change happens. And so we're really going to get into that kind of that one little bubble of the spiral of the becoming of the physiological imprint. So you'll have a reading to do, and then you're going to do actually another, so you have a reading of the book, and then you have another short reading, Why You Freak Out, which kind of talks a little bit about, again, about the perception that we talked about last week. And then you're going to watch the content video for the week. And again, we're going to get much deeper into the physiological process of your whole mind-body complex, especially into cortisol. And then what you're going to do is you're going to do a content quiz based on the readings and based on what you learned from the video. But also then what I want you to do is link up what you're learning about physiological imprints, about what happens when you get triggered and what happens when your body gets flooded with cortisol. And you're going to really zero in on what that feels like for you, because it's a little different for everybody. So I want you to really zero in on, because your body doesn't lie. Your body is super connected with your subconscious mind, where most of your stress response originates. So if you can kind of zero in on what happens, your whole physiology, your own personal physiological imprint of what happens, what it feels like when you get stressed out, it kind of gives you a blueprint then from how to deal with it. And so we're going to learn about it conceptually, but then you're going to take that knowledge and you're going to really kind of zero in on, so what does this really feel like for me? Because we do. It's a whole not just spiral, but it's a whole feedback loop of, you get stressed, your body reacts, but then when your body reacts, it makes you get more stress. And again, when I talk about body, I'm not just talking about your shoulders to your toes. I'm talking about the whole human system that you live in. So then your reflection is going to be based on what your own personal physiological imprint is. And again, what you need to do is go absolutely step by step by the activities that are written in Blackboard. And then the last thing that you're going to do, you have two tools for this week. One is just recognizing. Last week you wrote about your inner chatter. This week you're just going to stop and pause and recognize, 4 times a day where your inner chatter is, because most of the time it's going off and we're not even aware of it's going off. And so we just pause and reflect. I just want you to pause and notice, and then write down what you noticed, right? So 4 times a day, just pause and notice where your inner chatter is, or notice if it goes off, if you're in the middle of a moment where it's going off, and just pause, notice, and write down that moment. Write down what your inner chatter was saying to you. And then the longer practice is called somatic clearing. And that basically is kind of trying to start at the level of your physiology and really release all the emotional buildup from stress and anxiety. So it's going to be a pretty deep practice. It's going to be a really body-based practice. So you need to make sure that you have 25 minutes of really uninterrupted time. This one is probably better if you have a place to lay down, because you'll probably get very deep into the feeling aspect of it. And also we're going into some different practices now. And so what I want you to do is, there's going to be a few just preliminary recordings before the practice that you need to listen to. Because again, these are a series of practices that go with the book. And so I want you to just listen to the disclaimer. Basically, don't listen to these while you're driving. And then also there's an introduction to all of the practices. And then there's an introduction to somatic clearing practice specifically. And then there's the practice. So there's going to be a lot of listening, a lot of audios to listen to, but they're going to be kind of briefer. And then I want you to do the somatic clearing practice. So what you're going to turn in is the quiz, and then the reflection on your own personal physiological imprint, and then one summary that contains both your practice with the inner chatter of just noticing your inner chatter 4 times a day, and then a summary of your experience with the somatic clearing practice. Again, it's really important to watch the videos. If the videos get long for you, you don't have to watch them all in one sitting. Just pause the recording and get up and move around. And it's important to retain all the information, but if it's just too much for you, I know you guys are spending a lot of time in front of the computer. If it's just too much at one sitting, just pause it and come back to it. But the content of this week is really important because it lays the foundation of understanding how harmful it is to just remain in stressed out states. And then, what happens when we begin to actually authentically change our experience. So the reading in the book, the Why You Freak Out reading, the video, the content video, and doing the quiz, writing the reflection, and doing the practices.